Good morning, everyone. Yesterday I spent the entire day with a lady who is 92 years old. She is full of spunk. She has all her faculties, and she even remembers all of her words. She never gets tripped up. I have CRS syndrome, worse than she does. And it's just inspiring. But one of the main concerns in her life right now is she developed AFib at some point, but she wasn't diagnosed until December 2025 because she had pneumonia, was in the hospital, and then they discovered these ailments that she had that she just simply lived with and never even knew about. And now she's scared because she thinks that she's going to have either the shock treatment or surgery. Now, in talking with her, she was explaining that she recently had a bout of illness again, and she believes it was bronchitis. And I said, "Oh, did you go to your doctor?" And she said, "No." And I said, "Well, you really need to follow up with your doctor when you get ill like that. What did you do in the meantime? Did somebody take care of you? Did people visit you? I mean, did anybody even know you were sick?" She said that she does have family that helps her out, but they were vacationing and nobody knew she was sick. I said, "Well, I know in the past your family prepared your meals for you. What did you do this time?" She said she still had some prepared meals in her freezer, but she really didn't feel like eating. So she went on a liquid diet and she basically did like chicken broth and water, beverages like that. And she also was able to tolerate some like canned pears during this time. So while conversing with her, she expressed her frustration with hospitals, and she said she never wants to go back to a hospital. And I said, "What is your hesitation about hospitals?" And I've had bad experiences at hospitals as well, so I get it, but I wanted to hear from her what her experiences have been. And she said, "Honestly, I have never really had much going on in my life. I've never had surgery. I've never had a broken bone, but I have had to go to the hospital a couple of times." She said when she had pneumonia, though, she had male attendants taking care of her, and it was very humiliating for her. She's 92, so I get it. I can totally understand the modesty, the embarrassment, the humiliation. When my grandfather had cancer, he had providers in his home as well, and they were women, and he felt the same way. He didn't feel comfortable with a woman caring for him. So my point here today is we need to have the utmost care and compassion for our elders, and we need to recognize and honor that at some point in their upper ages, my grandfather was almost 80. This lady's 92. We need to recognize, they do have embarrassments that maybe you and I don't. Maybe it wouldn't bother you. Maybe it wouldn't bother me, but it really bothers them sometimes. And that does cause a problem because in this example, my friend did not seek medical help, even though she could have had a possible pneumonia again. She thinks it was a bronchitis. She's better. She's not coughing. She doesn't have, that raspy, liquidy junk in her chest, which I'm thankful for. But at the same time, she didn't understand the danger. And like I said, she doesn't have dementia. She has all her faculties. It's pretty amazing. But she was so hesitant to go to the doctor because she did not want to end up in a place with male caretakers because it's so embarrassing for her. That's why I titled my video today, "We need to talk with the elderly, not at them." The elderly knows what's best for them, especially somebody who's lived until they're 92 with all their faculties. I have talked with her before about assisted living versus nursing home care. The reason I know about these differences is because I used to work in a law firm and my specialty was probate, wills, trust, estates. Okay, so I know a lot about this area. Where I live, and it's not the same everywhere, assisted living is like your own apartment. They may have a nursing wing that you can call upon 24/7, but you are independent, you're active, you can get around. They usually have shuttles, so you don't even need a car when you go into a place like that, but you do need a large sum of money up front to pay for it. The ones by me that I have experience with, when people go into these, it's like a pay down. So you give them money and then they pay off of that for your needs. They also usually have things like movie theaters, barbers, hairdressers, convenience stores, activities, craft time, bingo, and they usually have lavish cafeteria style places where everybody gets together and eats breakfast, lunch, dinner, and probably snack time as well. But it really is more like independent living. Now, I explained this all to somebody else once, and they were mortified because by them, they lived in a different state than me. They said assisted living is not like that at all. It's more like a rehab program. It all depends on where you live, how they define assisted living versus nursing home care and also rehab care. Rehab would be like you're recovering, but you can't quite go home yet. So you go into rehab. It's like a hospital setting, but you're still pretty much independent, but you could be wheelchair bound. You could have had surgery that needs some long-term care in a professional setting. So when I was talking with her and discovered that she has this fear of humiliation and shame, she was also saying she wants to have surgery to have a pacemaker. Now, I don't know where she came up with this conclusion that that's even on the table, because I had never heard of that before from her family. But this is something that she's thinking about. She's thinking in her mind, she doesn't want to do the shock therapy, so she wants to do the pacemaker. So I said, okay, let me ask you a question. If you are hesitant to go in the hospital when you have pneumonia, possible bronchitis, something like that, are you okay with going in the hospital when you have surgery for your pacemaker? And she said, oh no, that's done right in the office. I asked her to clarify, what do you mean it's done in the office? What is your understanding of that? Because see, personally, I don't really have much experience with pacemakers, AFib. My family has a genetic heart condition. I know minimal about it based on, what my grandfather went through, my uncles have gone through, but I don't know anything other than that. I don't really have any experience with the surgery or any of that. But she thought that she was just going to go sit in the chair in her doctor's office, just like when they do the blood pressure and take her vitals when she goes for a checkup. And she thought they were going to do the pacemaker right there in that same chair. And I explained to her, I highly doubt that, but I said it in a very compassionate way. I didn't want to come across as argumentative, and I certainly didn't want to come across as trying to dispute what she's saying. This is fragile in nature. And also, if you have this certain circumstance, you want to be very respectful, because this woman has lived 92 years old. I don't have her life experience. She has a lot packed away there, and I don't want to ever step on her toes or make her feel uncomfortable with anything I ask her. But she said she did not believe she'd have to go to the hospital. So I explained it to her like this. I've had multiple surgeries. I've never had a pacemaker. I've never had heart surgery or anything like that, but I have had multiple surgeries. And with the exception of a couple that were done by laser and outpatient, I did have to stay in the hospital 1-2 days, depending. And I asked her, what if that happens? Are you going to be hesitant? Are you going to just not do it? What are you thinking? What are you planning? Because she's solidly thinking now that this is just done right in the office and she's just going to walk out of there after. She's not thinking clearly about the delicate process it is on somebody who's 92. Because she herself knows she's 92, but she doesn't feel 92. She thinks she's younger in her own mind. And she said she would be okay with going to the hospital for one night if they wanted to monitor her, make sure the pacemaker was working, and all that. So I finally talked with her about that, and she said she would agree to go. And she said she already has plans for the aftercare. She knows people that can help her make meals, help her shower, so she's good. And I said, okay. So then after, when I came home, I actually looked into it just to find out for myself. And I don't think it's as cumbersome. You know, years ago, it probably was a lot worse to do this type of surgery. But now you still have to see a surgeon. It is outpatient. It's not done sitting in a chair where they take your blood pressure and they just, you know, do it right there. It's not like that, like she thinks. But it's not like a week-long hospital stay either, unless there's a complication. I also read some reports out of Japan that were very interesting. Out of so many people that they did the surgery on, I think it was 12. Out of 12 people who were over 90, up to like 94, 96 years old, those folks did have to stay in the hospital longer, and 3 of them never came home. 3 of them ended up in a nursing home. But what was interesting about that was the pacemaker stopped them from ever having another stroke. So I thought that was amazing. And that's very good information to have. You know, it was online in a chart and they had it all spelled out. And I thought that was really good to know, because now if she does have the pacemaker, it will hopefully improve her chances, not diminish her chances, because she does not want to go into a nursing home. I talked with her years ago about assisted living, and she was against it. When she heard those words, assisted living, she's thinking locked in a room somewhere, no socialization, doing as you're told, like a, you know, prison. And I explained to her, not around here. There are assisted living places where you would be totally independent. You could even renovate your own apartment if you wanted. That's what it's all about here. I said, nursing home is different. That is a higher level of medical care in the event that you're in a wheelchair, you have dementia, and so forth. I'm not in the medical field, but I've had relatives that have had different outcomes in their lives. I've never, ever had a relative in a nursing home. But I did have, my granny was in hospice care in their facility. But my grandmother and grandfather, they stayed home until they passed. We never, ever even dreamed about putting them in a nursing home. However, they were able to stay home. See, some people, they just need a top level of care. And it's not practical. It's not possible to keep them home. But right now, because she has all of her faculties, I told her, I said, you don't want to go into a nursing home at this point. It would probably make her depressed. She's a very social butterfly. She loves to talk with people. She has all her faculties. She doesn't stumble over her thoughts, memories, words. She gets around. She cooks for herself. She does not drive anymore, but she gets food delivered. She mostly eats, like she loves chicken and she likes some vegetables. So she whips herself up dinner. Other people do bring her meals. But the point is, she's still really independent. She can walk without assistance. She doesn't need a walker. She doesn't need a cane. Her family did set her up with one of those like life alert buttons just in case. But other than that, she gets around just fine. And I told her that. I said, if you were to go into a nursing home right now, you would be probably miserable based on the little I know about nursing homes. And I'm not trying to dissuade her from going into a nursing home. What I'm dissuading her from is to think about it, because I know how she loves to have people over in her home. I know how she cares for her home. She just enjoys being independent. She likes to do her garden. And she does have paid helpers that come and help her with these things. Obviously, she's not going to get on her hands and knees and do the landscaping outside. She has help and she can do that. That's wonderful. But she does have this fear that she doesn't want to be a burden. But I explained to her that's not going to happen right now. What I'm getting at here is we need to be mindful when we talk with our elders. She is so full of life and so fun. And, you know, it really comes down to, we have to remember that our elderly citizens have way more experience and knowledge than we do. And in talking with her, I didn't see a need to boss her around. I didn't see a need to mother her. Now, I do have a tendency to do that I do have a tendency to say, can I get you a glass of water? Can I make you some food? But I didn't push it on her. And certainly, she does not want to be mothered or treated like a baby. She likes to do for herself. So if you are someone who has an opportunity to talk to somebody that's elderly in their 90s, treasure it. They're so precious. My grandmother had Alzheimer's at the end of her life. I didn't have this opportunity to talk to her one-on-one. She didn't even know who I was half the time. So I feel like I'm getting so much pleasure out of talking to her, listening to her stories, of which she has many, and just taking in all of her inspiration. She still crochets. She showed me one of her grandchildren just had a new baby, and she was crocheting something, and I couldn't believe it. I can't crochet. I picked up knitting needles once and was in tears for 10 minutes. I couldn't do it. Somebody in their 90s is a blessing. Thanks for watching today.